Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Prof. Daudi. Uh, Thank you very much, all of you, for attending this webinar. Today, we are going to talk about the PBL package design and development. For the conduction of the PBL, we do need a scenario or a case to present, which is the backbone of the PBL session, actually. The materials which are given for that are of different types, but usually what is done in the medical schools is that we make a clinical scenario. So the clinical scenario which is developed for this is specially constructed for this PBL sessions. It does mimic the real clinical cases, but it is not exactly the clinical cases. So we are going to talk about how these PBL scenarios are developed and how they are formatted and how they are presented. The learning outcome will be that after attending these sessions, the participants will be able to construct appropriate learning outcomes and learning issues for PBL cases. Learning issues are actually derived from the students, but these learning issues, if we are aware of them and we think as a student over there, we will be able to incorporate those learning issues into the learning outcomes. We should also be able to apply the basic principles of instruction material development for effective case construction, explain the basic components of a PBL case, and we should also be able to use a standard case format or a template to organize the case. The templates are different for used by different universities. I'm the one which I'm going to use is the one which is commonly used in Malaysia, in Malaysian universities. If you are familiar with other ones and you are happy with other ones, it's absolutely right, and there is no harm in using those templates. Okay. We all know that there is a lot of concern about the 21st century skills going on, when we say that the workforce of the university students is not well prepared for the jobs. So the PBL is one of the ways, is one of the best ways actually of teaching learning, in which these problems which the students face, they are very well tackled. So that is why the PBL was introduced, and the PBL has become very, very popular because of this reason. It's not only the knowledge component which is developed through the PBLs, it is also the humanistic values and the professionalism and the social issues, social skills which are developed because of participating in PBLs, which is a very, very important component of PBL, and no other teaching learning method actually deals with that. So PBL is a student-centered inquiry-based instruction model in which the learners engage with a realistic, which is not real, but it is a realistic, ill-structured problem. The problem doesn't have to be really very perfect. It should be adjusted according to the learning outcomes which have been identified for that case. This requires the problem is such that it requires further research as well. The PBL case, it folds over time, similar to an actual clinical problem, and simulates the interaction between the patient and a doctor. The student identify the gap in the knowledge, conduct search, and apply their learning to develop solutions and present their findings. It is not a problem solving per se, because problem solving means that the students are not going to look for the diagnosis or look for the treatment of the patient. Actually, while going through the case, they will find out what part of the concept which is being discussed in that part of the trigger they are not familiar with, they are not confident about, and how they are going to develop their knowledge of that concept. Through collaboration and inquiry, students can cultivate problem solving, metacognitive skills, engagement in learning with intrinsic motivation. The educational principle of PBL are three in number. The first is that a problem is very important, which is which takes the center stage in the PBL session, is organized around the problems that motivate integration. Very, very important component, that there should be integration of the basic and the clinical sciences. There was a time when the PBLs were conducted only for a single subject. There were physiology PBLs and there were biochemistry PBLs. They were not real PBLs. They were just simulating a type of a PBL, but the actual gist of the PBL is through integrated integrated learning of the basic and the clinical sciences, together with professionalism, allowing the learning in context through formulation of questions rather than answers. The content should be interdisciplinary in that case. The approach is interdisciplinary approach in case construction to promote deep learning while going through the process. The process is very specific, and we all know that there are a number of steps that which students have to undergo to solve the mystery of the case. So practically these steps are standard, and all the medical schools actually use those same approaches. Then there is a team in the PBL which works in a small group. Usually the number of students is 7 to 10 or 11 maximum, but in some places it has been said that this team of 5 to 7 is also very functional, especially so when the number of students are less, or the cases are more practical type of cases. For example, in the engineering and in the dentistry, they use lesser number of students for the PBL, but in the medical field, usually the number of students in a group is about 9 to 11 in number. The goals of the effective case are the process goals, which are active deep learning in context, critical thinking, abstract thinking, independent learning, student-centered approach, teamwork, and the leadership skills. While the content goals are to reinforce the content, to expose to new information and skills, to illustrate integration of disciplines, to illustrate application of the content, generate good questions, and maintain interest. So these are the goals of an effective case which we should be able to achieve to make a very good PBL package. The questions which was given in the puzzle, you can see it over here. This is the slide number 5. Most of you have done very well in picking up the D option. There was only one person who picked the B option. Actually, if you look at it, it is very easy because the pattern is so simply given. So I have created another option which can replace C, which will be a bit more thinking sort of an option. So later on, you can work on this option and see whether it is better than the C, which was in the actual case which was given. The characteristics of the PBL case are divided into two types: the feature characteristics and the function characteristics. The feature characteristics are associated with construction of the PBL problem and the student's interest in learning, and these can be manipulated keeping in view the function characteristics. Function characteristic practically is the main gist of a PBL, is considered in evaluating the effectiveness of problems, and these characteristics actually represents the objectives of the PBL. You cannot play around with the function characteristics, but to achieve those function characteristics, you can change the problem format, for example, little bit. The problem difficulty can be manipulated, familiarity can be manipulated, clarity and relevance also can be manipulated, or you can give a cues in the case scenarios to make the job easier for the students, depending upon the student type and their level and at the level of the course as well. The feature characteristics, we are going to just define them in few words. The first one is clarity. It should be realistic but not entirely real. It can include fictional details to reinforce LOs and omit those details which complicate the case. Please remember that the cases usually are taken from the wards. The real cases are taken, and these cases are modified to make the PBL cases. The familiarities, if we use the common scenarios, it will activate the prior knowledge of the students and improve the understanding and broader conceptual framework. The relevance is very important. It should be progressive logical sequence to stimulate deep learning for generation of hypothesis, and for the students who are learning from novice to a component. So the level of the PBL cases will keep on increasing as the student progresses from year 1 to year 3, 4, 5, if the PBLs are still conducted in the clinical years. The difficulty is pitched at the right level of the student's understanding or the phase of the course, neither too simple nor too complex. If they are too simple, the students think they are not important and they will not be interested. And if they are too complex, the student will not be able to do it, and then they will be very much frustrated about that one. So practically, it is very important that the complexity should match with the level of the students. The format is that it should integrate basic and clinical sciences, incorporating professionalism and the psychosocial component. This sentence will appear many times in my presentation because this is the most important component of the development of the PBL cases. So we are going to keep on re-emphasizing it at each and every step. The function characteristics of the PBL cases includes intended learning outcomes. So the outcomes should be identified first, and the case should be focused on that learning outcomes. The critical reasoning, a well-written narrative designed to stimulate critical reasoning and questioning during discussion is important. Collaborative learning, there should be enough material for the students to discuss the hypothesis, to refine their hypotheses, and to construct their study plan while maintaining the interest in the PBL. The teamwork promotes learning while going through the discussion of or identification of the learning issues. The trigger interest employs key phrases, observations, or data that facilitates moving the case along the desired path. So the intended learning outcome, critical reasoning, collaborative learning, teamwork, trigger interest, these are important components. And ultimately it promotes STL. STL is self-directed learning. Although students are working in team, but it helps the students to be self-sufficient in doing the research later on to complete their study. And they do in-depth learning along with the time management and lifelong learning skills, which is again a very important component of the 21st century skills. We go to the stage where we'll be talking about how the PBL package should be designed. There are a number of instructional development methods or the models which are given. Merrill's principle of instruction, Dick and Carey's instructional design model, Assure model, the Kent model, there are a number of them. There are a few others which are not over here. We are going to talk about them in a slightly more detail. The first is called as the AD preview or review model, which is commonly used for the PBLs in many universities in Malaysia, in which you do the AD means to analyze the problem, goals and objectives, the prerequisites, learning environment, timeline and limitations. Then you design the format, material, content and resources, etc., etc. Then you develop the case according to the design that you have developed. Then you implement it, first doing the dry run. In the dry run, you ask few of the students to go through that case and see whether they are able to come to the same conclusion or the same learning outcomes which you intend to, and then you can conduct the real session with the students. Then at the last is the E's for evaluation by both the students and facilitators, and that will help in improving the case for future use. The second one is the Keller's ARC model of motivational design. It motivates the students to do the PBL. For that, you have to gain the attention of the students, to gain and to keep the attention as well, so that the students keep on working on that PBL for a week or so. The relevance should be relevant to the stage, of course. The confidence is the students should believe that it is achievable, and satisfaction is the sense of achievement or reward which comes. So if the students are able to conduct the PBL completely in a good way and they are happy with it, means they have the sense of achievement over there. The one which I'm going to discuss in further detail is the Gagne's 9 events of instruction, because this is one model which gives each and every step a great depth and great information about how we can design a PBL model. So we are going to go through the nine events of instruction of Gagne's, and we will see how we can apply these events in construction of the cases. The first is to gain the attention of the students, which will develop interest and focus the learners to the task. Manipulate problem clarity by catchy titles. The key cues or keywords, analogs, metaphors, stories, and pictures in the problem design to guide students toward intended learning outcomes. You can add all of these things and you can make your case a good narrative rather than a dry case history like we do in the hospitals. Visual cues can include videos. You can add videos, for example, showing the physical signs. You can use a video over there, show pictures, X-rays, ECGs, investigation reports, etc. You can incorporate the cost in investigation, which is very interesting because normally the students can ask for so many of the investigations they would like for the case as the case develops to be done. But if you tell them the price and tell them the profession of the patient, then they would know that how difficult it is for the people to get these all investigations done. Use catchy phrases in the text, give patients details like the age, occupation, race, etc., which is very important information, and it helps the students to focus more on the case scenarios. Discussion boards for online sessions can be constructed in which the students can interact with the facilitator in between the two sessions. For clarity of case design, consider students' prior knowledge, which is very, very important. Again, that students should have a prior knowledge to solve or to go through the learning of the case. Otherwise, the students will be totally lost. The language abilities of the students should also be taken care of. If the students you think are not very good in, for example, in English language, which is a problem in most of the places in Asia. So you can have the standard of the English which you use, the words which you use should be more simpler ones rather than the more Victorian type of English being used over there. The learning styles of the students, if you are aware of that, will also help you because you can add more visuals or audios in the PBLs, or you can have for the kinesthetic learners, you can have some activity in the PBL triggers as well. I'll tell you how in a few minutes. Ascertain the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes define the purpose of the learning activity and limits the scope of the case. The learning outcome represents the basic learning that all students are expected to accomplish in integrated manner. Map the course outcomes to the module outcomes because you are going to develop PBL packages for each module. So you should be aware of the module outcomes and use the Bloom taxonomy for cognitive, affective, and psychomotor learning level selected for the case. And aim for the higher levels of the behavior, not for the know and understand, but they should be able to analyze and synthesize and the later stages of the Bloom's taxonomy. Make sure that the outcomes which have been selected are motivating. Learning issues identified by the students, complete the list. And you can add those learning issues which are identified by the students in your next cycle of using that same PBL, because sometimes the student come up with the brilliant ideas of which we probably have missed them. Ascertain the same thing, learning outcomes, phrase the outcomes as cognitive goals and behaviors. An ideal learning outcome states a specific task that student would be able to perform after going through the case. We have done a session on the how to write the learning outcome. So I think you have that presentation as well. So you can go through that again to reaffirm your knowledge again. For example, explain the physiological and biochemical basis for fatigue, muscle ache, and stiffness, which is associated with exercise. If the case is, say, on the exercise and you want to deal more with the physiology and the biological component of it. Without learning outcomes, the case discussion becomes confusing, too long and complex to promote learning. Take into consideration the student's academic level and the background knowledge. Again, very important. That's what I said. We are going to keep on saying this thing that the students' background knowledge, the previous knowledge, the prior learning is very important to be taken consideration of, and they should always have some learning which might be remote, which might have occurred, say, in their school lives or the last week or only yesterday. So they should at least have some knowledge when they come for the PBL. It should promote constructive learning. For recall of the Gagny's next event is to recall learning. So they should promote constructive learning. We all are familiar with the constructivism model of learning, in which it's being said that the knowledge is built on the previous knowledge. So cases should activate the prerequisite knowledge to build on and enrich the student's understanding of broader conceptual frameworks. List the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, competencies students are expected to have before approaching the case. For example, the prior lectures which have been given, the courses taken previously, the examination in which the students have sat before, and the level of those questions over there, so that you know that what type of case you are going to use for the students. Build the cases on previous knowledge, old or new. Discussion is open and everybody should give the input to involve all the students. It's very important. Sometimes the students who are not or who don't involve in the PBL are simply shy. It's not that they don't know it, they just are simply shy, or they are not very fluent in the language. And when you are not fluent in the language, then you have to speak twice actually, so the student take time into it. So the simple way is that you can ask the students to repeat whatever the other person has said. Doesn't matter, because that is what we do as a lecturers in the meetings also. When the person have discussed something, we still give our input by repeating the same thing again and again. So ask them to repeat whatever the student have said, or repeat it in their own words. The concept maps also promote meaningful learning. So many universities actually ask to make a concept map at the end of each PBL session. Although it's a bit difficult to develop a concept map for each PBL, and the students get exhausted by it. But actually, it really tells you what is going on in the thought process of the students, and it helps the students also to see whether they have learned everything correctly or not. Present the content, learning in context for interpretation and analysis. Present the material that stimulates learning, covering the basic in clinical sciences, behavioral sciences, ethical issues, to make connections and understand relevance. When I say all those things, doesn't mean that all of them should be present in each PBL case, but basic and clinical sciences, along with either the behavioral science, ethical issues, social issues, something should be there also included in the trigger, so that it can give the holistic development to the students. Keep the flow of the triggers like history taking. Familiarize the students with the investigation forms which are used in the hospitals and protocols. So in many places, what they do is that the same form which is being used in the hospital to which the students go is replicated and is used in the triggers, so that the students get familiarized with those forms, and when they go to the clinical, they are more familiar with the clinical setup. Design the cases that suit the stage of the curriculum. Plan how much time can realistically be allocated to the case. So even in usually we give 2 hours of a session, but sometimes it can extend. So the next period is usually left empty. No activities is planned for that day, because sometimes the discussion can go beyond 2 hours, and it is good sign. It is not a bad sign that it is extended. Actually, you should be worried if the case discussion finishes very quickly. That means that the students have not worked properly, and they have not put their brain together to think to solve the case. So the time allocated for each trigger is being specified. Usually it's a rough time, but it can go plus minus as well. Okay. Find the real world problem, one the students may encounter in their own life or future careers. Don't go for those rare sort of syndromes as a case, or the case which they are going to say 1 in a million, 1 in a zillion. So usually the cases which are selected for the PBL triggers for each modules are the ones which are the common clinical problems of that module. For example, in CVS, usually it is myocardial infarction, or hypertension, or atherosclerosis, things like that. While for example, for the endocrine, it is mainly these cases are developed on diabetes, or growth hormone, or corticosteroids and things like that. So these are the things which commonly the students are going to say the patient of, say, Cushing syndrome and etc. Guide the learner. Learner guidance is very important. Instruct the learner how to learn, provide discussion question for each trigger. So after each trigger, discussion questions are given to the students. I'll show you when I'll share a template of the PBL with you towards the end of this session. Discuss rules for working in groups so that you can maximize the learning success and everybody will be participating in the discussion. You don't want any students to be left out in the PBL. So this guidance is very important, and it should be emphasized to the students before the beginning of the PBL session. Practice group processes, listening, involving others, assessing their peers or themselves for their work. Explore different roles of students to accomplish the work that need to be done and to see the problem from various angles also. Include activities like you can have, as I've told you, you can have some job to be done quickly for those learners who want to do it, to know it, like surface marking of you are talking about for example, you're talking about taking the pulse, you want to look at the radial. So what is the surface marking of the radial artery over there? So you can easily ask the students to recap that. Pulse measuring, looking for anemia, jaundice, and the most important is if you have nothing else to do, ask the student to summarize. So after a bit of a discussion has taken place, a facilitator can actually ask the students to summarize what has been discussed so far so that they can construct their knowledge and they can put the things in proper prospect. Carrying out the task through specified steps of PBLs, I've emphasized it earlier on as well. There are specific steps and each of the step has its own significance. So none of the step will be missed. Sometimes the students go from the finding the facts straight away to the learning issues. That is not the way of doing it. So the brainstorming area, generating of the hypothesis, exploring the knowledge, these are all very important components and they should go through the process step by step. Follow the timeline. Elicit the performance of the students. Scaffolding to self-directed lifelong learning is the approach. During the case construction, break the case into a biteable chunks. The smaller the case, lesser the amount of information, the more the time will be there for the discussion of the students. Even if this case is longer in length, but the information which is given it is not too much. Some of the things are added over there only for the interest sake of the students. Motivation to having an element of decision making. If the students have to make a decision making, that will make them very excited. So tell an element of what will you do next. What investigation are you going to ask for? If you bring in those questions in towards the end of each trigger, then the students will be more happy in participating into it. Avoid wastage of time by unnecessary information, which is not the part of the learning outcomes, and you have just added it as a distractor. Distractors are allowed, but not too many in a PBL case. Add concrete cues or reminders, ensure all learning outcomes are appropriate, guide the students to appropriate resources. It's very important that to elicit the performance, you are guiding the students step by step. During the discussion, allow the students to think aloud. Cooperative learning by dialogues among peers, involve all in-depth discussion and questioning. It is very important that the brainstorming is not only said, it is being done over there. Allow students to quickly refresh their understanding, and guided questions can be given to the students if required. The next one is the feedback, but in PBL cases, you don't get the feedback, actually you evaluate the case. So cases can be scrutinized for improvement by facilitators if it is given individually, verbal or written. Evaluate the content versus the level of student, core content with the time management, factual flaws and authenticity of the case, package flaws like language, grammar consistency, standard of visuals, etc. These all can be looked again through the feedback of the facilitators and the students. By the students, level of previous knowledge for the students can give you the feedback whether the case was intriguing enough for them that they were able to construct their learning. Using questionnaires, portfolios, reflections, student panel, focus group, or structured group feedback, there are many ways of getting the feedback from the students. The amount of content, was it adequate, too little, too much? The students are going to can inform you about that. Whether it was motivating enough, you can get, and if it was not motivating enough, you can ask the students how it can be improved, so the student can come up with the brilliant ideas to improve the case later on. The relevance of the content, again, so again, this was a very important component of the characteristic of a PBL. So the relevance of the content should be important for the students to understand. The assessment is the last component, the competence in learning outcomes. The assessment of the process can be done by individual, group, or peer. You can have the rubrics and the checklist, which normally includes the communication skills, teamwork, research, interpersonal and professional skills. While to assess for the knowledge, there is a mixed menu approach. Ensure that the all learning outcomes are achieved to standard, because this is the criteria of the different medical associations, that all the outcomes should be achieved to a standard. The performance in examination, quizzes, and presentation, the type of questions which can be used are varied, and a number of type of questions can be developed: MCQs, MEQs, EMQs, best answer question, OSPs, and OSPs. Usually, these questions are associated with a specific problem. So you have a scenario, and with that scenario, you can develop a question over there. The assessment of the product can also be done by watching these students, how they write the case summaries, for example, in the wards. If the students start going to the clinicals in early part of their courses, for example, in many universities who integrate the basic and the clinical sciences, let the student go at least once or twice in each module to the hospitals, so they can write case summaries over there. The portfolios of the students can be used as an evidence of work and reflection. Retention and transfer of information is very important. The practice at retrieval. Learner needs to generate responses with minimal cues repeatedly over time with varied application, so that recall becomes fluent. Opportunities to be given to the students to connect the knowledge and skills to real situations. You have taught them something, they have learned something. Take them to the hospital, take them to the clinical skills lab, and ask them to practice that skill over there. Reflect on the activities to find strength and weaknesses. Is done by linking previous learning to newer situations as part of STL, reinforce in hospital teaching or in the learning sessions, or develop the questions based on scenarios and clinical skills. Ask the students to make concept maps to link. Again, the concept map is very important component of the PBL. PBL package development. If this is the cover page of few of the PBL cases which were developed, you can see that the type of information given on this is in the first one, Alone at Home, is a catchy title. It tells for which year it is, which session it is, which department is developing it, and the case number of and the year. While in the second one, it just gives you the information of the block for which it is, nervous system and behavior block, who is the coordinator of that block, and who is the clinical coordinator of the block. It's very important that in this university, the clinical coordinators were appointed for each block, who organize not only the PBL cases who participate in the development of the PBL cases, but also help the students in the clinical wards during their clinical sessions. The third one is giving the name of all the peoples who were involved in the development of the PBL package. Here, the situation was that, because the KPI was such that each staff should write a number of articles to get promotion or to get increment at the end of the year. And this university used to consider a participation of a person in 3 PBL packages is equal to 1 publication. So that was a very good incentive, and so their names have to appear over there, and they should be actively participating in those, and that was a win-win situation both for this university as well, because the people were very enthusiastic then in participating in the PBL, and the facilitators used to get a reward for that. So this is one way of motivating the people to write the PBL packages. Set the ground, protocol and procedures, how it will be done. A PBL committee that functions under the curriculum committees has to be there to not only look at the development of the PBL packages, but also the implementation of the PBL, the venues, selection of the venues, the problems associated with venues, all these things they used to take care of. PBL committee is chaired by the medical education mainly, but it comprises of all head of departments. If the head of the departments are very, very busy, then they can send their representatives to the different meetings of the PBL committee. It has specific SOPs for developing PBL packages. They will plan the working groups for each module. So for each module, a working group is formed, which is going to develop a new package. And the working group comprises of usually 4 or 5 people representing those disciplines which will be contributing most in the development of the PBL package. Assign representatives of each working group with concerned disciplines, decide the leader for each working group, and a clinician is included in each working group as needed. Clinicians are given a bit of a liberty that they might not attend all the meetings, but the other representatives all should come in the sessions which are being organized to develop a new PBL package. The working group sets its working agenda and schedules the meetings. The new package is discussed in PBL committee for approval. At least one new package is developed for each module per year. That is always the target. Might not be achieved all the times, but if you push the people around and ask them to do it, usually they are able to develop at least one PBL package. One PBL package means for each module. So if you are having 11 modules or 10 modules in a year, so you are able to get 10 or new packages. The concern over here is that the package which is used for year 1 will not be used for the next class, because the senior students normally give all the information to the junior students. So the package is repeated only when the students have moved to the clinical years and they are away from the junior classes. So technically a PBL package which is used once will not be used for the next 2 years till the students have gone to year 3. So you'll have to keep on developing new PBL packages to fulfill these criteria. The development of the new package requires 8 to 10 months of a very hard work, of course, but it's a very motivating and very enriching experience when you learn about the other subjects as well, other than your own discipline. It's like wetting of the question makes you a very good all-rounder, and you will know the basics of all the subjects. Similarly, developing a PBL package will make you an expert, at least in that module as well. Changes in curriculum should be communicated to the PBL committee. It is very, very important that if the curriculum committee has made any changes in the curriculum and something has been taken out or something has been added into it, it should be communicated to the PBL committee so that they can modify the old cases or they can develop the new cases according to the requirements. Sometimes the lack of communication between the different committees which are working in the university cause a lot of havoc. Analyze the goals. Team with the theme. The PBL committee identify the learning outcomes of the curriculum module or theme to be covered in PBL. A concept which is researched through collaboration and teamwork is selected. It covers applied aspect of the course, and it also involves communication skills and socioeconomic aspects. The team members of all the concerned disciplines, they contribute in this activity. Select a theme that widely covers content from number of disciplines for integration. The subject experts from relevant disciplines produce an extensive list of topics which are deemed necessary to comprehend the theme, forming the list of core learning outcomes, which can be 5 to 7 for each PBL. A few more is not an issue. Identify the ILOs. The learning outcomes are planned by the PBL committee, are modified by the student learning issues. Each LOs are derived from the module LO. The learning outcomes and difficulty of the problem will influence the student interest and their critical thinking and self-directed learning. Students evaluate the difficulty of the problem and decide if they want to work on the problem and to what extent they want to work and how they want to approach the problem. So it is very important that the problem which we are creating should fit into the working style of the students. It should not be too difficult so that the students are off from the very beginning, and it should not be the very simple one that the student thinks that this is just a piece of cake. Time and resource availability, the familiarity with the subject, the number of learning issues and influence the students' involvement in solving the problems. So the resources should be provided to the students to discuss those the ILOs. The familiarity with the subject is very important, and the number of learning issues. If the number of learning issues, the list becomes too extensive, the students will lose interest. Case should lead student to a field of learning. Choose the case, select the most appropriate topic that covers the theme. The problem should match the student's level of knowledge, intended learning outcome. Match the student learning of knowledge previously acquired. Reactivation of prior knowledge helps in problem solving process. Motivate students for further studies, and task shows clear linkage to future applications. Be suitable to undergo process of analysis for future application. Open enough to sustain discussion of possible solution. It's very important that when we are developing a case, the case should not be a open and shut sort of a case. For example, if you are developing a case on arthritis, and in arthritis, the worst case scenario which can be given is gout, because the features of the gouts are so specific that as soon as you give the clinical scenario, the students will already know that it's a gout. And once they know it, then the remaining part of the PBL, the whole PBL becomes redundant. So select the type of arthritis for which they have to search for the answers before they actually find out which arthritis the patient is suffering from. Confirm 2 or 3 educational objectives. It's very important. The knowledge component is always there, but the other objectives like communication skills, entrepreneurship, leadership, etc., some of those components should be the part of this scenarios as well. The brainstorm scenario, problem as keys for structuring relevant learning. Select the most comprehensible case for the ILO. Identify how this case will integrate basic and clinical science topics and combine various medical disciplines. Content to be covered, including skills and attitudes, is identified by team members representing all the concerned disciplines. Select contents which are clinically and scientifically important. Common problems students are expected to handle in practice. Contents relatively easier to understand by self-study. So not a very complicated formulas or the molecular level of things which the students will not be able to, all the students, I would say, will not be able to understand by self-study. Determine the specific problems that most likely have several options. That is where I was giving the example, for example, of the gout. Frame the case now. Scenario should have element of intrinsic interest and relevance for future practice. In PBL, the problems are mainly used as a trigger, which is aimed to prepare students for future learning. Usually in one PBL case, you have 3 to 4, maximum 5 triggers. Make sure that if you are having a 2-session PBL or a 3-session PBL, if you are having 3-session PBL, you can have up to 5. But if you are having 2-session PBL, that means that all the triggers will be revealed to the students in one sitting. So 3 to 4 is the maximum. You cannot have more than that. Actually, the students won't be able to tackle it, and towards the end, they will just scroll through the case and try to finish it as quickly as possible. So it depends upon the type of PBL framework which you are using. It is a 2-session or a 3-session one. Cases are developed from actual patient records and are represented in a way the actual patient presents for care as an ill-structured problem further tweaked and pruned. Involve clinician to set the facts right. So whenever you are modifying the clinical scenarios, you might add or subtract something which is very crucial for the clinical situation. So the clinicians are always there to help us in finding out whether then after the revision of the case, still the case is valid enough to be considered as that specific problem or specific situation. Design the PBL scenario from problem embedded that will emerge through stated student brainstorming. Should not be a straightforward, simple case that first sentence tell you the patient is suffering from myocardial infarction. Okay, full stop, no need to discuss anything further. Control the scenario. Don't make any case to be picture perfect. Identify the cues, problems in the trigger context, and design trigger visuals and images. Cases should be motivating, interesting, and generate good discussion to engage the students. Case should elicit the type of thinking, discussion, research, and learning that is required to meet the learning outcomes. And the task involved in understanding the problem, interactive games or hands-on activities influence the interest of the students. We can add them, but make sure that these games or the hands-on activities which are being incorporated are not too time consuming, because when everybody is trying to do it, and sometimes the things get a bit out of control of the facilitator. Add concept maps to complete the comprehension. Again, sorry, it has to come again and again. Identify the resources. Scenario should promote participation by students in seeking information from various learning resources. It is good to guide the students towards the learning resources, but it is not compulsory for the students to follow your resources. Guidance should be provided to help learners engage in meaningful independent learning. The type and location of learning sources. For example, if you're telling them about the book, where they can find that book, whether it is available in the library or not, you have to tell them. The quality and accessibility of the resources. Is it accessible, easily accessible or not? Provide the list of all resources that will help the student in the learning. Books, if you are recommending any books, it should be the latest edition, and you should mark the relevant area which the student should read. For example, read this topic, page number this, paragraph 2 and 3. So you have exactly told them students, you have actually hold their hand and taken them to that point where they can get the information. If they want to avail it, good and well. If they don't want to avail it, they want to do their own research, it is even better. The audios and videos, if there are university resources, what is the site of location of those resources? Sometimes the resources are lying with the departments and the other people, the other departments don't know. So those resources are most of the time are not utilized, and they become redundant after some time because some new technology has come and now they are no more useful even to be used. So it is very important that the audio videos which are available resources should be informed to all the departments where they are located and who is the person in charge of it. For web research, you provide the URLs. For library resources, identify the journals and the papers which are available, which are going to give this specific information. Last but not the least, academic staff is the most important resource for clarifying the concept, and any facilitator is the resource person as soon as the PBL session is over. The student can come to the facilitator to ask for a question. And obviously, if the question is on physiology, they will look for a physiologist. If they are lost about the concept of biochemistry, they will look for a biochemist, etc., etc. So the academic staff should be always available and should be approachable for the students to clarify those concepts. Review the draft to check relevance, redundancies, and replications. First draft should be read by all the working group members to confirm that the key characteristics of the case are met, that the learning outcomes are amply covered, that the duplication and redundancies in contents are removed, that the facts and figures are correct, that the visuals are of good standard. If you're putting over there, for example, report. The report should not be photocopied in a manner that you are not able to read it. At places where the colored pictures are important, you can insert those colored picture also in the PPL triggers. Although it is a bit expensive way of doing it, because the color pictures will take more of a ink, but still they are one good way of learning for the students. And see that all the resources which are given to the students are correct. The final draft is presented to the PBL committee, and the PBL committee will look for the level of difficulty, which is, whether it is appropriate to the level of students, and whether the social, cultural, and religious sensitivities are taken care of. This is very specific for Malaysia because we are a multicultural society, multi-religious society. So we don't want to make any trigger or anything which clashes with the sensitivities of the different cultures of the religion. So be very careful in selecting those. Even starting from the name of the patients, you have to be very careful in developing the scenarios. Now the PBL facilitator guidebook. I'm going to share one guidebook with you, one PBL package. It has been modified for this session. It does not flow exactly how it should flow, but it will give you some rough idea how the PBL facilitator guidebooks are being prepared. The first thing is the template. The good cases are built on a template that accommodates the educational objectives of the PBL. The template is the framework on which cases are designed that include learning outcomes, triggers, and the arrangement of information to be presented. The probable discussion of each session as well is put over there. Generally, the flow of the case follows the history-taking, investigation, and management pattern, which is used in clinical situation, making students fluent with the pattern. Usually, the management problem pattern is an overall journal management of the patient. We don't go into the detail of exact dosage or things like that. The pharmacology usually comes as if it comes in a PBL trigger, it comes as a part of a case closure component. Because we don't want to give the idea to the students that they are competent enough to go and treat any patient with the problems which they have learned in the case. The congruence between content validity, learning objectives, and the learning experience is achieved. Allow use of deductive inductive theory to refine hypotheses. It's very important. You add something in your list of learning outcomes, then you remove it. In the next stage, you said, no, you want to bring it back over there. So the students keep on working in deduction and induction of to refine their hypothesis. And that really helps the students in going through actually what happens in the real life as well. That the clinicians keep on revising their regimens, they keep on revising the way they are dealing with the case, all those things. So it's almost the same sort of situation for the students. In the facilitator guidebook, there is an introduction session. In the introduction session, you greet the facilitators. It's very important that you welcome the facilitators to that. It's like a narrative. The book is written in a narrative form. You reaffirm the philosophy and the steps of PBL. Sometimes the facilitators are new, sometimes the facilitators are clinicians, sometimes the facilitator are those people who don't come for the PBL very frequently, but sometimes they are asked to do it when there is a shortage of staff. So you have to re-inform the philosophy and the steps of the PBL session for them. So put that information in the facilitator guide. Inform about the day and time of PBL sessions. So sometimes because of when you are conducting the session back to back, for example, the half of the class is going for a practical and the other half is going for the PBL, and they will then switch off after say about half an hour or so. So the facilitator should be informed about all those things. So for that purpose, sometimes the timetable is also included for that week in the facilitator guidebook. Facilitator guide should be distributed a week before the session, giving enough time for reading to the facilitators. Remember, this is a facilitator guidebook, and it is meant only for the facilitators. The facilitators are not allowed to reveal any part of the guide to the students. Never ever, never ever. Facilitator meet before the session to discuss any issues. So once they have read it a day or two before the PBL sessions, there is a facilitators meeting in which they will discuss the triggers, how they are going to approach it, how they are going to conduct the session. And if there is any query about anything that is clarified in the PBL triggers, or if something is you think is not correct given over there, you can highlight it, and then the urgent modifications can be made. The facilitator should give a report of any difficulty during the session for remedial actions. This is very important. Usually it is missed. The facilitators are so busy that after doing their PBL, they totally forget about what difficulties they have made. Usually you should, while you are conducting the PBL, should keep on writing the difficulties which you have faced over there, even if the acorn is not working, or the bulb is flickering over there, or the writing material was not available, the duster and the markers were not working over there. Just inform those things so that the process can be improved. Facilitators should also report any factual error in the case. Reminder that proper feedback is given to the student is also incorporated in the package. Facilitators should ask the students for any improvement in package or process. This is one example. So we have the learning outcomes were 8 for this. Suppose there were 8 of them, and then you know that these learning outcomes are coming from different disciplines: biochemistry, physiology, genetics, then ethics, then professionalism, then pathology, then clinical. A part of it will be anatomy over there also, because it's a hemopoietic and lymphoid module. Usually the anatomy is not much covered over there, but because there was enlargement of the liver and spleen and it was palpable, so at least you can include over there the surface marking of the liver and spleen and how it is palpated in the triggers. Okay, so this is trigger 1. It is a complete history. You will see that it starts with the age of the name and the age of the boy, like a history taking. His father is a family, was taken by his father to a family physician. Please, I cannot read all those things over here. So just go through it. So some things which are highlighted over there. For example, his father says, so you have a narrative over there. You're just picking up the father's word and just putting them right over there. As normally this is not done in the case write-ups. No history of asthma, blood loss, blood transfusion, or hospital admission. It is a no history, but it's very important, so it should be emphasized. Umar is always ill and need blood transfusion nearly every month. So this is another boy, the half brother, so in the family history, who is always ill and he needs blood transfusion every month. So is it relevant? This information is relevant for this patient or not? Then the decline in his performance. So there comes the social history. The boy is not performing well in the school, and that is worrisome for him. He has no friends because he has moved to a new place. So whether this is the contributing factor for his being tired and shortness of breath and all those things, and being not responding enough or not being active enough. At the end of this trigger, you will see that there is a discussion questions which are given. This is a very important component. Clarify any difficult words and terms. You are guiding the students. List the key information about MOAs. Identify and discuss presenting problems in history and physical examination. This depends upon how much information you are giving in the history. If the history is only the presenting complaints, then you will modify these questions accordingly. For each problem, list and discuss the likely causes, which will be the generation of hypotheses, and identify any investigation. Means that gives the cue to the students that the next thing which is going to come will be the investigations. So you have covered the history, you have covered the examination. Something the doctor is thinking about is, and they are going to ask for some investigation. So you are going up to this level in this trigger 1. The trigger 2, you will see that the approximate time is given. The time is, they should take about 40 minutes in completing it because of pallor and enlargement of liver and spleen. So you're giving the reason over there. Normally, again, this is a keyword added over there. Dr. Zia arranged for blood tests. Some of the results are shown below. And when the results are given, make sure that you give the the normal range of all the findings and the units as well. Because nowadays we don't ask the student to memorize all those normal values. So practically the students should be aware that when they get the report, these normal values are given, and these normal values will vary from place to place, because people are using different type of labs and labs are using different type of instruments. So there will be some fluctuation in this normal range. So the students should be made aware of those things. And then you will see that they are giving the blood report, and in this blood report, they're not saying only it's a hypochromia, microcytosis, polychromia. They're telling them also what does it actually means. That means that you are helping the students to quickly go through these things so that they can progress, and then they don't spend too much time in finding the meaning of these words. Then again, keeping in view the blood report, Dr. Zia decided to do further tests to exclude iron deficiency anemia. So there is a picture of, say, microcytic hypochromic anemia now. So they want to exclude iron deficiency anemia in this one. And so they have given again the one investigation report over there. Looking at the report, Dr. Zia decided to arrange for hemoglobin electrophoresis. So hemoglobin electrophoresis is a new word which is coming over here. And the students will be thinking what actually it is, how it is done. So these are all the things which are going to intrigue the students to think about. Again, the discussion question comes: clarify any difficult terms, list the additional key information, interpret the Muis laboratory test now, identify and learn about Muis additional problems. For each problem, list and discuss the likely causes, that the hypothesis development over there. Okay. So the trigger 3, then approximate time for this is 60 minutes. This was a 2-hour session. So 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and now it is 60 minutes. The result of hemoglobin electrophoresis is shown over there. So this is all over there. This will be a bit difficult for the students because probably they will not be very familiar with that. So they have to search through some information, or they can make them as their learning needs. But they have to go through this process of discussion, brainstorming, definitely. Dr. Zia explained to parents that their son has thalassemia. So the mystery is all solved over there. The doctor has already informed that the patient is having thalassemia, the hereditary type of anemia, and it is a hereditary anemia. So now the students know that there should come some genetics over there, and there should be the other son, which is also having the blood transfusion being done, how it is related in this case. Okay. So practically we are linking the different things for the students to help them come to the conclusions. Why Umar's anemia is different from that of Muis. Umar developed this anemia probably at the age of 2 years, while Muis has developed at the age of 8 years. Why it is different? Why the Umar needs blood transfusion and why Muis does not need blood transfusion? So it's important questions, and the students will be thinking and discussing a lot about it. Okay, and then at the end of them, they will summarize their learning issues. Okay, now if we go back to the trigger 1, after the trigger 1, this sort of a table is provided in the guidebook. The discussion matters. The first one will be the difficult words and terms in that trigger. So all those terms have been listed. That is the possible student responses and questions, and the discussion points and learning issues which come out of it. In that, the meaning of each word is given over there. For example, the family physician is the person who provides primary health care. So what is primary health care? The student might ask again. So you have to ask the student to find the meaning of the primary health care if they don't know about it, because these are all technical words, so they have to know about it. Similarly, short of breath, in English dictionary it comes dyspnea, so you have to ask to look in the medical dictionary what does the word dyspnea actually means. What does the word physical activity means? Pale, half brother, blood transfusion, vital signs, all of them. You are going to give all those responses. These are all responses for the facilitators. The students will look through for each and every one of them by themselves. Then the key information. In the key information, ask the student to read through the trigger line by line. If they don't read it line by line, they might miss a lot of information over there. So there's an 8-year-old student, complaint of this, looks pale, all those things, and other systems were normal. Up to the end of the triggers, the students have listed all the key information which has been provided over there. Now they have to discuss each and every of those key information separately. For example, I have picked up this information over here that he looks pale. So what are the common causes of looking pale? You will see that all the questions which are coming in the possible student questions are in the question forms. They are not in the form of the learning outcomes or learning issues. They are in the form of questions. The students want to know what are the common causes of looking pale. So they will brainstorm and they will come up that it can be because of anemia, or there is a blood loss, or there is a poor skin circulation, or strong emotions such as fear, or there is a peripheral vasoconstriction. These are few things they will talk about. So and all of them will discuss all of these to include or exclude, inductive, or you have to remove it from the deductive. So what is anemia? So you define the anemia. What are RBCs? What are the sites of RBC production? How are RBCs produced? The word hemoglobin is coming over there. So they have to come with what is hemoglobin, and then what's the normal level of hemoglobin. So practically most of these things probably they have already learned in the foundation module. So this is only the recap. If they don't remember it, then they will make it their learning issue. Okay, then at the end of this, the third component will be that hypothesis and future questions. So what is hypothesis? The likely causes of tiredness and looking pale in boys. You have identified these are two problems. The liver and spleen enlargement with a family history of a blood disease. You will think that the patient is suffering from anemia, which might be because of the nutritional deficiency or because of the abnormal hemoglobin. But further questions, what investigations, remember what investigations you will ask for to assess whether he has anemia or not. So full blood count, assess for the type of anemia, blood film and iron studies, assess for the possible cause of enlarged liver and spleen. Over here, they have decided they don't want to do it now because they first want to know whether it's anemia or is there. If it is beta thalassemia, then they would like to know the cause of the enlargement of liver and spleen and how it fits into this scenario. Now, look at the number of the learning issues the student have identified. This is the exhaustive list of the students' learning issues. You will normally see that the learning issues they are identified are more than the learning outcomes which have been given in the facilitator guide. But ultimately, they work out to be same because these are in the question form and that one is in the form of learning outcomes specifically written over there. Okay, so all of these. The students will decide how they are going to do these learning outcomes. We promote that each and every learning outcome which is related to a discipline should be read and by all the students, for each and every students. They should not take one learning outcome and say, okay, I will read about the red blood cells and the physiological factors required for its formation. And the second student say, I will read about anemia and its type and common causes, not like that. Because these are the basic learning outcomes for each and every student. So each and every student should read about it. Some of those things which are not very peculiar, which are not very pertinent at this stage. For example, the social issues related with chronic disease needing repeated blood transfusion. One of the students might volunteer. So we have to make sure that there's the must know and good to know topics which are identified in those learning outcomes, and the must know every student should read about it, and good to know some students will volunteer that they will search for that information, and the next time another group of students will volunteer for those good to know topics. So that means that the work has been being divided, it has been made less, but that does not mean that the basic knowledge for all the subjects is not covered by each and every student. Then the resources for the students, the books, you will see that the book we normally prescribe are those ones which are also the prescribed book for that subject. So for physiology, for example, it's Guyton and Hall physiology, but you will give the latest issue of it. When the 2020 issue is the latest one, the is the 14th revised edition by Elsevier. You have to read through these topics and go through pages, this, through this. I wrote cross over there because I don't have the latest physiology book. I think I have the 10th edition, not the 14th edition. Then the Kumar Clark and the clinical medicine. Again, you're prescribing them one book, the 2016, but that is the latest. After 2016, there's no new edition of it. So you can still prescribe them, and that is for the pathology. You will also tell them the educational websites which the student can explore, and you give the reason what they should be looking for in that educational website. So say this, each chapter introduces you to the main clinical concepts on thalassemia, focus on the background, pathophysiology, history, causes, and lab studies. So you're still guiding the students, even you're giving them all the detailed information over there. Atlas of Hematology, look for the pictures of different types of anemias. Good educational resource to understand the morphology of the main cells in the process of erythropoiesis. Double click on each image to create a magnified image. So this type of information is given to the students. PathLab, check for slides and blood pictures, and check with the resource person for any further assistance. If you need any information, you can still go to the resource person, which is any of the staff members of the university. Okay, then comes the second session. The time is 120 minutes. Now you're giving the facilitator notes, you're guiding the facilitator what to do. You will tell the facilitator that the students should have to start by discussing their learning issues, and that should go up to say about 80 minutes. Out of 120 minutes, 80 minutes they are going to spend in discussing the learning issue, and for that a scribe is needed on a whiteboard, if the whiteboards are used or whatever way you are using it. So the facilitator will give this information to the students that you have 80 minutes to do this thing, okay? And one of you will be the scribe. After they have discussed it, the case closure is given. Case closure practically is to close the loop. So whatever the students have learned, you tell them what happened actually to the patient after that, so that the students are satisfied whether whatever they have worked on after going all those investigations and management of the patient, whether the patient is doing fine or not. Okay. So practically this will be the case closure, which will take about 20 minutes. Sometimes in the case closure, some learning issues might arise, but this is now up to the students to find those learning issues. So all the good students will go and find about those informations which are given over there. But technically the case has stopped at the learning issues at the end of the first session. The facilitator note again, for the last 20 minutes, you have to recap the case, encourage your group to discuss how they could work better as a group, get the feedback, students' feedback, self and peers, facilitator feedback, individual and group, take feedback about the case and suggestions, take feedback about yourself as a facilitator as well. So it's very important that at the end of the session, or the last 20 minutes, the facilitator and the student talk heart to heart with each other to ask whether they have done well or not, and if they are not done well, how they can improve. And you give feedback, open feedback is given to each and every student in this session. The last component of the facilitator guide is the appendix. This is for facilitators only, because the facilitators might be the clinicians, and an anatomist might be sitting for this one, which is mainly a physiology triggers. So to make the facilitators comfortable, a lot of information is given in the appendix, which adds to the information which has already been given in the discussion part of the triggers already. Further information on various concepts, you can add some textbook or articles, some information from there over there. Some diagrams and flowcharts are also added into this. Don't copy or provide any part of the guide to the students, and don't discuss any information in the guide with the students. If you do that, practically you're totally blocking the thinking process of the students, as a facilitator, and practically it kills the purpose of the PBL completely. I think with that we come to the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jazakallah.
Thank you very much. Very nice president.
Thank you very much, Prof. Rashid.
So, should we start with the discussion and question answer session?
Sure, Prof.
May I start with Professor
Sure, Prof.
for your
Okay. Thank you very much. It was a very nice presentation. Very good elaborated. Of course, many of the institutes are doing it, but you have polished it. You can say question or comment. Actually, my observation is that the medical educationists, they are using too much terminologies that sometimes causes confusion to the teachers who only concentrate towards their material. I just give you some examples for you to comment, and that has been discussed in the chat box also, and somewhere here also, like CBL and PBL, SDL, DSL, learning objectives, learning outcomes. So instead of learning our own physiology, we have to learn these terminology. So can I request medical education to just to condense these terminologies for us who are basically non-medical educationists?
The examples which you have given, Prof, are all different things. So SDL is different from DSL. So practically you do need to have two terminologies from, even if they are the twins one, then you have to give them the different names. No? So they have the different names. But yes, I totally agree with you that because medical education is comparatively a new discipline, the people who write the papers in different parts of the world, they start giving them their own terminologies, and sometimes these terminologies become part of the, because there is no proper textbook of medical education. So these terminologies are too many. I completely agree with you, and I think there should be a way of limiting those terminologies. But at some places, these terminologies are very important because, for example, the PBL and the CBL are two very, very different ways of conducting the sessions, and they have very different implications, and they have very different characteristics, and they have very different approaches in conducting them. So this has to be maintained.
Yes.
Thank you, madam. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you very much, sir.
I second Professor Rashid's
Okay.
query and comments. I think that the medical education, this field, that should define its limit. It's I feel that in medical colleges and medical schools, the medical educationists and medical education, that is overwhelming the basic subjects. I'm very sorry to say this comment, and if anybody mind my comment, I apologize for that. But I feel that they are overwhelming, and they are actually ruling us that teach this like this, like this, like this. What this nonsense is? We are teaching for the last 30 years, and we are giving training that no, you should teach like this, you should teach like this. What's this?
That is the concept of lifelong learning, no, Prof? That you keep on learning from the cradle to the last day, to your last breath.
Dr. Usana, Professor Usana, it should have some limit.
Yeah, it should.
No, they are crossing the limit. They are entering in our departments. They are entering in our offices.
May I?
And Dr. Malik wants. Yeah, Dr. Malik wants.
May I respond, Professor? If somebody is coming to your office, I think you should welcome them. And so it's basically, I think maybe you have faced some overzealous kind of medical educationists. So this is from both sides. If,
Professor Malik, your voice is too low. Can you please speak louder?
Okay. if we, I mean, medical educationists and the other teachers in the medical schools, if they both understand that they want to work for they want to work for the betterment of the students and for better teaching of the
प्रोफेसर
students.
आदम प्लीज जरा ऊंचा बोलें, जरा हमें बिल्कुल समझ नहीं आ रही.
What I was saying is that I think we must understand the purpose of all this exercise. If both medical educationists and other medical teachers, they agree that they want to work for the betterment of the teaching process and for the betterment of the profession, so both have their important roles. Most of the time problem comes that sometimes some over enthusiastic medical educationists, they step into the technical field of other disciplines where the problem comes. So I think both the medical teachers and medical educationists, they should understand their limitations. So you see, it's very interesting that in the medical teachers, they always they accept the new editions of the textbooks. Nobody got problem in using, for example, the PowerPoint, moving from Blackboard and chalk to the PowerPoint. Nobody had problem with that. So only problem comes when the teaching learning techniques are introduced. And I think we should be open to the new, not only new knowledge, but new ways of teaching and learning, but there should be a mutual respect. And I think as I said in the beginning, if we agree to the purpose of for betterment of the profession, then everybody has their role to contribute.
You have a question? Dr. Iram, I see your hand raised. Walaikum assalam.
I'm Dr. Iram, Islamabad Medical and Dental College. Dr. Sir, thank you very much for such a nice presentation. I have two questions. First question is that if we discuss certain topics during PBLs, should these topics should already been taught in module, or they should be reviewed after PBL, or the PBL is enough to discuss them?
Okay, the second question?
Second question is, as you said, that the LOs should not be divided among students. All the students should come with prepared, all the LOs. Usually the students have already many other classes going on, like STDs and their lectures. They don't come prepared with all the learning objectives. So then should it be I don't think that all the students are able to go through all the LOs. So what do you say about this?
Okay, regarding your first question, that whether the student should be taught about it before or not, some basic knowledge has to be there. For example, in our setup, for the first 6 months when the students come, there is a foundation module. There are actually 2 foundation modules. The first foundation module lays the foundation of anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry, in which we teach about the basics of these 3 subjects. And in the second one, we have the basics of pathology, in which almost the whole of the general pathology which we used to learn in our days is covered over there, with the basics of pharmacology and basics of microbiology. So the three subjects are divided. At least some information students should have. For example, if the patient comes with a myocardial infarction, the student should at least know what does the heart muscle look like, what are the blood supply, what is the blood supply of the heart, some idea about it. So yes, they do need to have some information. Otherwise, they won't be able to build their knowledge on that.
No.
Second thing is that after the PBL session, if you are worried about it, you can have a seminar on the same topic later on. And in that seminar, you can ask either the students to discuss all those things, or you can ask the the different disciplined people who to give their input over there. This is one way of making yourself satisfied. But all the things which are discussed in the PBL are the learning outcomes of that module, and all the students should know about it. So there's no question of dividing the topics among themselves. Sometimes it happens that a student has a specific interest, for example, for physiology. They will never talk about anatomy and they will never talk about biochemistry over there. So at the end of the day, their knowledge about these two subjects will be very minimal, and that might affect the results in the end of the day. So we don't encourage the students to make any presentations. We want the students to do discussion. No presentation. When you're doing the presentation, then you're worried only about your own presentation and you are not participating in the discussion. You don't know what the other person is saying. So the must know topics, every student should read about it. It's like the topics which are the part of that week.
Okay.
So when they're reading the other topics, they should read about those.
May I add to Prof. Dr. Iran,
Yes, sir.
you said if the topic should be topics being discussed in PBL should be taught in other ways. I think that would not be right then, because then there is nothing for students to search for.
Right.
So, and then you would be repeating the same thing multiple times.
Okay.
So most part of the PBL should not be covered through other means of teaching, so that students can learn. Because this is kind of the activity, the active learning. If you start teaching the same thing as a passive learning, so that would kill the efforts for active learning.
Specifically, no lectures during that time. If
Okay.
you give them the lectures, the student will wait for the lecture to be delivered so that they can read those learning issues. So it's a big no-no for that.
Right. Thank you, madam.
Dr. Ruxana, may
Yes.
I have a question?
Yes, please. Who is this
Thank
Dr.
you very much for your quite informative and comprehensive coverage.
Thank you very
And
much, sir.
mashallah, it's a good effort. My question is, we are dealing with the third year medical students, and most of the times students are not aware of clinical signs and symptoms.
Mhm.
And in the case scenarios, like we are discussing about orthopnea, dyspnea, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, peripheral edema. Likewise, we have so many, clinical signs and symptoms which students are not aware, because it is not their mistake also. They are in preclinical stage. So I don't know what is the idea of including the clinical scenario in this stage. Since they don't know the basic clinical signs and symptoms, so what is the point in teaching in the PBL?
May I know your good name, sir?
My name is Mohammed Tahir.
Tahir. Okay. Prof. Tahir, the situation is that the clinical scenarios practically is a one way of enticing the students, motivating the students to do the learning. And what you have said about the clinical signs and symptoms, it is a very important forum in which they will learn the physiology or the pathology of those signs and symptoms. Why the patient develops orthopnea, for example, why the patient develops dyspnea, why the cough is productive in some cases and it is non-productive in other. Why some patient develops bronchi and there are crepitations. What's the difference between the two? How do they occur? So they practically learn the physiology, biochemistry, and pathology of all those signs and symptoms through these cases. So practically what we are doing is, what the basic science teachers are doing, it is they are making your job easy. You don't have to explain to them why the patient was having dyspnea. You will just say dyspnea and they will know what the word dyspnea means. So if the PBLs are conducted in a right way and they are not overwhelming the students and they are learning it bits and pieces, and these things are reinforced, for example, in their clinical skills labs or their visit to the hospitals, I think by the time the students will come to you, they will be much better off than we used to be when we used to go to the clinic. We had no idea of what the hell all those conditions were. So I think it is a good forum. It's a good way of enticing the students with those issues and making them learn the things which are clinically relevant. It's not learning in blind when you're learning and you don't know why you're learning about all those things.
Just to add to that, if students have to learn few new terms in a week, I don't think that is too much of a burden. If students have to learn that what does dyspnea mean or what does orthopnea means, they are learning new terms, and maximum there would be 8 or 10 new terms in a week. So I don't think that would be really a burden, but that would definitely increase their interest. And by the time they go to clinical years, the clinicians would be really delighted that students are aware of all these terms rather than you starting from zero in year 3. And the next point is that PBL is all for integration. So the some input of clinicians has to be from the very beginning of the course. So that's what PBL is for.
Okay, can I ask Pauline? I see that a hand raised. Pauline?
Can I ask any question?
Yes, please. Who is this? Pauline. I was looking for Pauline first.
Okay.
Pauline, you have to unmute yourself. Dr. Maria?
Ji, ma'am.
Ji, you have a question?
Ji, ma'am, I have a query here. PBL, what we have been taught, the PBL first 2 years mein hota hai. For the clinical years, you do not have to go for PBL because you're already exposed to the patient. So is it, do we have to carry this concept because basic years?
There are universities in which the students do the PBLs in the clinical years as well. It depends upon the universities. Sometimes the PBLs are carried in the clinical years, sometimes they are not.
But mostly they are just confined to the first 2 years, like in Aga Khan. And then there's another question, ma'am, the modular system to बहुत से colleges में निकाल दिया है, but without implementing PBL. So is that the right way of implementing a modular system without introducing PBL? I mean, does it justify a modular system if it does not have the element of PBL?
Modular system निकाल दिया मतलब?
ये मॉड्यूलर सिस्टम बहुत से कॉलेजेस ने इम्प्लीमेंट कर दिया है, बट
इम्प्लीमेंट किया है. हाँ, अगर आप if you have a module, then you have to integrate those modules, and if you have to integrate, PBL is the best way of doing that. So I don't think that
without it.
No, you have to have you need to have a PBL in that one. I think PBL is the best way of integrating the different disciplines and studying in context. If we don't do that, practically what is the fun of having the modular system? If every discipline is working in their own specific locations and in their own specific boxes,
so it's entirely an incomplete module.
Yeah. So number of PBLs can vary. You can have a more PBL oriented curriculum. Say you can have for example, in Malaysia, there are universities who conduct one PBL every week. But there are universities who have 2 PBLs, for example, in a module. So it depends upon the resources. It depends upon their preparedness for a PBL. But PBL is compulsory. It's not that you have a modular system and you don't have a PBL. I think it beats the purpose of having a modular system. Then go back to the old-fashioned, 500 hours of
anatomy. That's right. Many colleges are doing that. Without PBL, they have implemented modular system.
No. I think PBL is difficult in the way that a lot of staff work is required to develop those PBL cases, and a lot of staff is involved over there. But that is what the teaching is all about. If you are not giving lectures, we have to do something, no? And I think when you get the hack of it and you start developing PBL packages, you really, really enjoy it. I mean, it's a big learning experience for all the people who are involved in PBL development, actually. Dr. Shazia Iram. Maria, you're Shazia Imran.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. And
Walaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone from Islamabad, Pakistan. I'm Dr. Shazia Imran from Islamabad Medical and Dental College. Ma'am,
Okay.
excellent presentation it was. I just have one query. You said that we can add the learning outcomes of psychomotor as well as affective domain as well. So how the students are going to cover those, either in skill labs before the second session or in that during that week, or how are they going to cover those LOs other than the cognitive? Thank you so much.
Okay. The psychomotor जो है वो we add a little bit of it just to entice the students. Like I gave you the example, look for the jaundice, look for the anemia, take the pulse, ऐसी चीजें होती हैं. And these things they can practice in the clinical skill lab. Communication skills होती हैं. These are all the components of your attitude and psychomotor skills. No? So these are polished in those, and a bit of activity practically breaks the monotony of going through the discussion. So student enjoy, and we cover all those type of the learning styles of the student as well in that one. You have to cover them formally if you are having an integrated curriculum in classes in which you practically teach them exactly how these skills are being performed. And Anila, okay. Anila, can I know?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
I am
assalam.
Dr. Anila. I'm a professor of biochemistry, as well I am the medical educationist. You have an excellent presentation, and we learned a lot from you. Actually, I had the experience of being, PBL, part of PBL since I started my career in 1996. So I have the experience of, implementing as well as seeing the PBL in different provinces of Pakistan. Actually, what I see here is that in some medical colleges it is implemented in a very proper manner, where the integrated curriculum is in its true sense. But in some provinces where there are some restrictions of mixed pattern of traditional and integrated curriculum, the faculty is not trained in a sense that they don't understand the basic philosophy of PBL, that it is not only for the knowledge, it also creates soft skills in the students, the leadership qualities, the communication skills, and they don't follow the proper, the process of PBL in some medical colleges. And, and I think that medical educationists are also not, they are making too many medical educationists which are not properly, they don't themselves understand what is the basis of these things. So what I need to say is that maybe instead of making too many people MHPs, they should be trained properly. It has become a commercial thing to get the money and train and give the diplomas and give the so I think that this is a very important thing which should be catered, that they should be educated properly, and then the faculty should be trained properly. The faculty basically don't understand between the difference between the PBL and the CBL. So what they do is that they just implement it as a name of PBL, and they are actually doing the CBL in that. So
okay, Prof. Anila, I got your message, and I think everybody over there have also listened to it. So no comments from my side. Whatever you have said is right. You have to, whatever you have to implement it in a right spirit. If you cannot do it, then you can do it partially as well. It's not necessary that you have PBL in all the modules. You can have some traditional teaching. You can have some PBL, but when you are doing the PBL should be done in a spirit so that you get the benefit of all the benefits of the PBL. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Okay, Afifa. Afifa, you're the last one. Okay. Afifa, do I know you? Have you met before? You're from RMC?
No, I am a telehealth physician, general physician,
Okay, okay, sorry.
and I
Okay,
want to join the medical profession as a teacher.
okay,
So I am enrolled in CHP yet.
okay.
So I'm just new in this field, and I just want to, when I have started doing CHP and all the portfolios, I realized that when 15 years back I was graduated, we had no PBL, and the curriculum was not integrated, and now it's changed a lot. We just had tutorials of 50 students, and that tutorials focused only on one subject. We only had 2 or 3 books that we used to consult, and the medical profession has started this medical education, MHP and CHP, whatever. These all are very helping to the new students, because the approach has changed from teacher center to student center. It was a great lecture for me, and I really want to thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Afifa. Okay, I think we come to the end of the session. Thank you very much for participating.
Dr. Usana, can I ask a small
Hold on, I have to
Yeah.
this is Dr. Nadeem from Islamic International Medical College.
Okay.
What do you do to entice our students to actively participate in the PBLs? Because a lot of times our students are used to just sitting quietly and simply looking at the teacher and listening to what the teacher is saying. And a lot of times when we try to entice them into doing PBLs or CBLs, they tend to be totally unknowledgeable about the subject and would like to keep quiet. So how do you entice our current students into becoming more vocal and taking active participation in the PBLs? Some practical tips from you, please.
Okay, Prof, the first thing is that in PBLs, the teachers are not supposed to speak a lot. So if the teachers start to speak, the students will stop speaking. They will only be listening. So the first thing is that it is very difficult to control ourselves, but the facilitators should not be giving any information to the students. And if they see the students are not participating in the discussion, you have to bring them into the discussion group. You have to understand why the students are not participating. Sometimes the students are shy type, like we normally find the students who are problem with English. So they cannot make a complete sentence, so they are shy to speak. Sometimes I allow the students even to talk and discuss in their own language, and then to summarize it in English. So one of the students will summarize what they have discussed in English. You have to give them the ways in which they can discuss and participate. And usually the other students are very helpful in bringing their other group members. So you can ask the group activity over there. The group leader is the best person who can bring in the people who are not involved in the discussion to be involved in the discussion. So if the group leader is not functioning properly, you can have a talk with that person and ask them that how he can bring the other students in the discussion. Usually my feeling is that the subject matter is not important. It is not important that the student should know everything correctly. Just make the student realize that they don't have to be telling the right answers over there. This is a discussion forum, and whatever come to their mind, whatever they think of, they can just simply speak. That is my approach to students. Just to think aloud. That is why I've added the word over there, think aloud. Think aloud, and then you are part of the team, and slowly and gradually the students will develop confidence. Initially, in the early phase of the year one, yes, the student find it difficult to discuss and to make a group. But usually 1 or 2 good students in a group, if they are over there, they can carry the whole group on their shoulders. It's a practical approach, I think.
Excuse me, can I have a question? Excuse me, last question. Yeah,
Okay,
Dr. Osama, I'm a physiologist. I want to ask about this. When we're having sometime a clinician and they will try to ask about some cases is not really good for the student, and it is postgraduate from his point of view. For example, we have a case of scoliosis for the module of skeletal system. So the case was about scoliosis, and we discussed about the physiology of the muscle, anatomy of the bones, and etc. and everything, not from the point of the management, but an orthopedic was very disagree about the case, as it's a case of postgraduate in terms of assessment and management. So we don't concentrate on the case in the management here. So what is the limit for the case to choose the topic?
Okay, the clinician is a part of the team, Prof. Whenever the team is formed, there is one clinician over there, and he or she has an equal say like any other member of the discipline. And when we are selecting the case, we are not looking at the beauty of the case, we are looking at the practicality of the case. How common it is, how frequently the student are going to see it. We are not trying to teach them orthopedics in year 1 and year 2. We are trying to entice them towards reading more about the musculoskeletal system actually. So if the situation is like this, that you are not happy with the case and you want to have a simpler version of it, scoliosis I can understand is a difficult one, and what you end up doing is to read about the muscles and the bones of the vertebral column, that's it, no? Because the technical management is not the part of the PBL. So usually there are some cases which I say is the open and shut cases, like I've given the example of gout over there. So it's the same type of case. You can argue with the group, and I think the people can understand that which is a more beneficial, or you can have multiple triggers over there, and you can use this case in a clinical years as well. So there's, you know, whenever we are having a discussion, there is always an agreement and there is always a disagreement on some issues. I think that can be solved. You have to give your reasons why actually you don't want that to be discussed as a PBL. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have to share a couple of slides before we finish the session. This is
Dani?
The last two slides. Yeah. Here, so this is the announcement for the next webinar, which would be on 20th of June, and this is about IPE, and the time would be the same. And finally, my usual next one, my usual appeal of charity drive. So I would request each member to donate $1 USD or equivalent amount to any deserving person or any deserving organization in your vicinity as a part of our webinar activity. With that, I thank everybody for your participation.
Thank you all, madam and sir, for your nice
lovely
presentation.
discussion. And some agreements, some disagreements, and I think that's part of the academic procedure and process. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the session.
Thank you very much. Also, Prof. Ruksana.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ruksana.
Thank you, Prof. Sosom.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
آره 10 میخوام کل گروه رو بگم دیگه. توی اسلاید در یک اسلاید 10 تا عنوان فعالیت شاخص